prediction about the blockchain for smart farming market. This time is predicted to double in the next 5 years also. So smart farming, precision agriculture, making use of big data and sensors, IoT, artificial intelligence in farming is going to increase a lot in the coming years. So this, of course, ties very well into agricultural systems that also work with blockchain and also provide added value-added services for every stakeholder involved on the platform. So that's very interesting. Take a look into all the options you can do with smart farming and how this can add value to a whole ecosystem so that technology can benefit everyone. Thank you all.
Before you walk away, if I have a very interesting article, how can I reach you? If I have a request?
If you have a request or very interesting article, you can find me at rafael@thefork.online, not an L, online. And otherwise, yeah, you can subscribe to the newsletter on the website and or give me an email, so yeah. Or respond to the newsletter also works.
And if I can't wait a whole month before reading the articles you select?
If you really can't wait, there's a really good solution. The last 2 forked news articles are online, so you can find them on our website. And all the coming news articles will also be published there. So yeah, you're lucky.
Also, we do have a LinkedIn group. That was what I was actually aiming on. Blockchain for supply chain, where Rafael posts an article, I think, weekly. Weekly. So, something weekly. Oh, could also be a nice picture of himself. So, join the LinkedIn group if you want to know what Rafael posts weekly. And for now, I'd like to invite Marika up the stage because I think she wants to share about the Amsterdam Blockchain Lab with us. Because there's some new developments, and I think many of the people in the room don't know about the Amsterdam Blockchain Lab at all yet.
Yeah, let's check. ABL. Yeah! All right, can we sort of get the website on? Yeah. Google. There's something called Google. Okay, so actually already 2 years ago we thought blockchain is interesting. We think it's very interesting for food, but in Amsterdam we are happily focused on other themes that use blockchain technology. And in the end, we really need to reconnect knowledge and experiments in terms of technology and of blockchain. So we started a discussion, let's sort of unite and gather the Amsterdam Blockchain Lab that unites those people. Okay, yeah. Yes, yeah, all right. Yeah, there we are. Okay, this website is actually renewed since yesterday evening. So you are the first ones to see this. There we go, Amsterdam Blockchain Lab. Woo! Beautiful, huh? Yeah, and what it is, it's a cooperative. So the organizational structure behind this is a cooperative. And CargoLedger will definitely join. And we really want to unite the blockchain ecosystem in Amsterdam and take adventurous projects into this blockchain lab, into this organizational structure. So what we aim for is that we do projects that have an ethical benefit and an ethical impact on society. Because in the end, the reason why most of us are interested in blockchain is it's going to renovate our sort of societal system, and it's going to render more societal impact. It's going to give more ethical impacts. Now, commercially, that's not always viable. So commercially, for those who have a commercial organization to do blockchain stuff, you need commercial projects, and they don't always do what you want blockchain to do. Now, this is the unit where we actually want to be able to draw some subsidy from governmental sources and enable us to do very experimental, very front-running work in terms of blockchain. We will even put the organization itself on a blockchain application. So everybody participating in a cooperative will participate in the blockchain structure of the lab. And this website is super new. The first event or the first thing that we're going to do as the ABL, as the lab, is the first Blockchain for Food Summit in the world. In Amsterdam, most likely in this location, where it focuses on blockchain for food. It's a summit of 2 days in September. I don't want to overload you with information because I think our next meetup is about that. Yeah, it is. But for now, that's a project of the ABL. But we really like you to get an interest in the lab. If you're interested, contact us, contact everybody who's sort of vaguely aligned to it. There is a list somewhere. I think there is a we are, exactly. It's got the Amsterdam Center for Entrepreneurship, which is pretty much the startup village. It's got Triple, which is a company that also has an office here in Amsterdam with 200 developers, or 160. And there are a lot of companies that are supporting the project. And once we get it all up and running, we really want you to join it. So we really use the fact that we all are in the blockchain sphere for some innovative societal impact. Yeah, any questions on that? Yeah. I think we need a mic for this. Is it stream-wise? Okay, just shout and I repeat.
Sure. Do you have like an idea on what kind of vision and what kind of projects you might want to work on? Did you already think of some?
Yeah, we actually, so there's a manifest. We wrote a manifest with, I think we were 20 parties who wrote on that. Yeah, so you can, it's there. Yeah, yeah. Yes, we actually, so we thought we are developing like guidelines. So what are guidelines that help you define whether or not your project is ethically blockchain sound? Yeah. And we really want to push towards what is a very commercially not interesting, but I think personally for many people very interesting phase, where you move towards the public blockchain. Yes, for sure. Yeah. Yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, no. I mean, we all know. Okay, this is my personal joke. We all know that Amsterdam equals the Netherlands. So no, the whole, right? Yeah, it's the center of the world, and and The Hague a little bit sometimes, but they have artificial beaches. So, yeah. Back to the blockchain lab. Any other questions? No. Okay.
Then I'd like to go back to the presentation, and I think the tech team is also trying to get Jan and Jenny on the Skype. Can I get the presentation back? Because then I'm going to recap our case that we as the Meetup advise on. And for this half a year, it's called Biofortified Seeds Nigeria. And there we are. And the name already kind of says it. It's a case on biofortified seeds set in Nigeria. But then always, every meetup we check in, and then the question is, do you know what biofortification is? So do you know what biofortified seeds are? Anyone wants to answer this question? That's less me talking, more crowd participation. Regulars? Anyone? Rafael, come join us!
So basically, the problem was that people in Nigeria, most of the times they eat their own produce for the most part, and they don't have that many different types of food, so they get undernourished. So what they did is they biofortify seeds, so that they, through not through genetic modification, but just through crossbreeding, basically add more nutritions to the seeds in a natural way, so that when they eat their own produce, they also have more nutritions and a better diet. And the problem with biofortified seeds is that you don't always see the difference. They look like regular seeds, although they're more difficult to produce in the end. So that's difficult to sell if people don't really see. You just have a bag of seeds. You say, yeah, these are magic biofortified seed. They're more expensive. People won't pay it. So that's why we're experimenting with using blockchain to prove that they're actually biofortified and different from the other seeds. Yeah.
Yeah, you actually answered the second question as well that I wanted to ask, namely, what do we need blockchain for? Well, you told us already, I think, to prove that the seeds are indeed biofortified, because you can sometimes tell the difference. Biofortified seeds are often a bit brighter in color, but then on the other hand, we're focusing on maize here. There's also types of maize that are not biofortified that also are more yellow and orange looking. And of course, if you refine the product, if you make a corn flour out of it, it's still much harder to tell. And of course, we're currently in the gathering data, design, and also writing stage. We're working very hard on the technical note. And we have a special guest here today, Bart, that will already tell a bit about our technical note and is going to talk about the types of blockchain. And I'm looking at our tech team if we have Jan and Jenny joining us. And Jan is our business developer in Washington, and he is with I would like both. Yes, I'm greedy. But if you get Jan, you might get Jenny as well. I think Jan might be in her office. And Jenny is working for Harvest Plus, and Harvest Plus is a partner here in this use case. Hello. Ah, look, it's Jan and Jenny with the Harvest Plus banner. Very good. I was just introducing you, but if you have sound, you can maybe do it yourselves. Let's see if you have sound.
Do we have sound?
Very good. Then please, introduction.
My name is Jan van Iperen. I'm business developer for the Fork, located here in Washington, D.C. And in a fortunate situation that I'm very close to the most important stakeholder in this project, Harvest Plus, where Jenny is the lead.
Hi, I'm Jenny Wilson.
Move a bit closer to the mic. We can hear Jan, but you have to be closer to Jan.
The mic's on the left-hand side of the laptop. I'm Jenny Wilson, and I work on business development for Harvest Plus. And I'm a nutritionist with a technical background, so that's why I'm in this role. So thanks for your time today.
Welcome, Jan and Jenny. I'd like our tech team to put back the presentation on the screen because Bart is going to talk us through it, I think. And then we'll also check in with both of you, I think. And of course, audience, if you have questions, suggestions, that's very welcome. I'd like to invite Bart, who is an architect at the Fork, up on stage to talk us through towards an open seed chain. Tell us what an open seed chain is. I'll give you this one as well.
Yes, thank you. So, so we're busy writing the technical note, and we're actually still in research. So this is kind of giving you a brief insight into the proceedings. And one of the things, of course, that comes to mind is when you look at blockchain that is used in supply chain projects, it's often private blockchain technology. So that's basically, it's part of the things that we looked at, like why is it that they use private blockchain technology, and how come that we would like to use open public blockchain technology. So that is the subject for today that we're gonna walk you through, or I'm gonna walk you through. So I have to warn you, I made this presentation today and I don't have speaker notes, so I might forget something here and there, and then you just ask around. Guys, can I get slides back? Great. Okay, so the first question is, so what is blockchain actually? I think I will use like the brief explanation that I use with my kids, or I have used it because, of course, I only have to tell them once what a blockchain is, and then they know. But it's pretty easy. Like if in a blockchain, everybody's watching, like us here in the audience. So if I give something to Marike, like this remote control, I give it to Marike, then everybody has seen that I gave that to Marike. Yeah. So and if you now pretend that you always remember, everybody always remembers that I did that, then you actually have like a blockchain situation. You know, we all have seen that it happened, and we don't forget it anymore. So we know for sure that it happened. No one can deny it. I can't say I didn't give it, and she can't say I didn't receive it. So that's basically what we have there. We have a trusted system, and the system is owned by nobody because we're just the audience here. You know, we're not owned by anyone. So there's no central authority there. It's just we just know because it's us. So that's basically the very important aspect of blockchain. So it's neutral, it's borderless, it's censorship proof because it hasn't got any owner. No one can censor it. It's immutable, secure, and it's always there. And those are very important aspects of blockchain. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. Focus, yeah, I think it's focus. Yeah. So if we look at private blockchain, it's actually it's like invented 2014, 2015 when enterprises thought, well, that's nice. We can use that Bitcoin phenomenon as well, but we don't want to use this open public infrastructure. We want to use something that fits our processes and our way of thinking a bit more. And so they took out certain aspects and they make it like private run systems. And you can modify it, and there are different architecture as well. But the problem is that even if you would take like a copy of Bitcoin and you would make it private, then immediately you lose like immutability, you lose the censorship proof, well, the characteristic that it has. Because once it has an owner, you know, he can modify stuff, he can be bribed or whatever. So there's a problem you introduce there. But of course, these enterprises wanted to play with this technology and they didn't want to go on the open public space immediately. So it's understandable. But if we want like the highest level of trust, we can't use it. So for that, we need blockchain. Like I said, we need actually these characteristics. And you can only have these characteristics if you use open public blockchain. So that's where our quest begins. And so that's basically the conclusion. If you want decentralized trust, then you need a public open blockchain. So how do we get this trust in a blockchain and be able to use it for supply chain purposes or for storing any kinds of proof actually? It basically narrows down to that you would have a public blockchain infrastructure and you would need to have it open, permissionless, to be used by people who verify the blockchain, which are often called miners. So that layer should be open. And of course you will add like transparency to a blockchain because it will add to trust as well. You can work with shielded stuff, but once stuff is shielded, it's harder to prove that it's actually done the right way. So I don't know how many of you actually are aware of the inner workings of Bitcoin. Can I see some hands here maybe? Yeah, so it's kind of like 1/3. Well, one of the great things about Bitcoin is that there's a line there that says triple entry accounting. It's like that. It's triple entry accounting is like integrated into the system. So basically, we're all raised with double entry accounting. You know, we learned at school that you have a balance. So if I have a business with a balance, and I send invoices to another business with another balance, and we have some settlement via the bank, then then these things can vary from each other. You know, someone can forget to put my invoice into his bookkeeping, or I can forget to register a payment or whatever. Yeah, so in Bitcoin that's not possible because it's all actually integrated, and that's what's called triple entry accounting. So if I send you a Bitcoin, the payment and the invoice and the administration is one thing, and it can never be out of balance. You can't have a Bitcoin which wasn't mined or sent to you. And that's basically, adds another trust factor to the system of blockchain. So often when you look at private blockchains, they do have like blocks which are chained with hashes to each other, but the insides of the blocks are often not designed with the idea of triple entry accounting. So it's just containing stuff. Yes, Raphael. Yeah. Yes. Yes, that it's the UTXO model here I'm talking about. Yeah.
All right, can you repeat questions when there's no mic?
Yes, so Raphael asked if I was talking about the UTXO model, which is related to Bitcoin and Bitcoin-like blockchains. And UTXO stands for the unspended output. So if I have a Bitcoin that I can spend, or I have parts of a Bitcoin that I can spend, these are all UTXOs. And basically, Bitcoin works like cash money. So you have a wallet, and you have like a dollar bill, and a $10 bill, and a $50 bill, if it even exists. You have those in your wallet, and those are all UTXOs. Yeah. So and if you spend them, you get your change money back, which become UTXOs as well. That's basically how it works. And that's all like in a triple entry accounting based system. So it can never be out of balance. And that's an extra factor of trust. But if we want to use a system for supply chain, of course, then we do need some restrictions on some kind of transactions or some kind of stuff we want to store. So we want miners to be able to verify the whole chain and to be able to audit, so to say, whatever is in there. But we don't want everybody to do everything that we need to do for a special project. So that's why we also need stuff like custom consensus and constraints on transactions. And we might even need shielding to prevent all people to see stuff that you don't want them to see. So, but these are now all like technological breakthroughs that are tested and proven over the last, let's say, 2 years, and which we can use now. So that's basically where we are now in the research and in the process of the technical node. So please, if you have any questions, ask them, because I think this is the last slide. This is actually how we want to use open public blockchain infrastructure and utilize the trust that comes with that for special solutions, so to say, which is, for instance, the fortified seed case in Nigeria.
Then, there we are already.
Yes.
If we're asking questions, then first of all, I'd like to ask a question, I think, to Jan and Jenny, and I think especially Jenny. You now heard why open public blockchain would be so interested, and as you might know, it's not common yet in food use blockchain for food use cases to use open public blockchain. How do you feel about using open public blockchain for this project?
I personally think it's a really good idea, but I know that the food industry, people that I've talked to, are worried about protecting their privacy, and it's lack of understanding from the stakeholders. They don't understand which information will be that some of the information could still be sort of private. They don't want people to know sort of how much money they've they've spent on a certain crop, or sometimes they don't want to know they don't want people to know who their suppliers are, just to protect their privacy and their innovation. But yeah, in theory, it sounds like a very good idea, and especially as this would be a test project for us. With the more open it is for people to see, the better.
I'm also open for questions for the audience, for both for Bart and for Jan and Jenny. So please, as far as this goes.
My question would be related to, let's say, convincing these multinational companies like HZPC, like Agrico, like KWS, to actually Bayer, I guess, to work together in an open seed chain, because I know a lot of people involved in these companies, and it's a lot of privacy and stuff like that. So how could you convince these companies to work towards a more open seed chain through blockchain technology?
Is that question for?
No, I think Bart should answer this, because it's one of the things. First and foremost, I think indeed the general understanding is one thing where there's still a lot of need for attention. We still have to explain a lot in the coming months, years to people. Also, that open does not mean that everything is on the street. And that's, for instance, the alternative that's happening right now with, for instance, Walmart, IBM, that is a different story. So I think it's a very fair question that's being asked. How can you address this in the most proper way?
It is a very good question, and it is actually the case that you don't store too much information at all on a blockchain. So basically you store proofs. And the cool thing is that now we've experimented the past few years with encryption models that even make it possible to encrypt everything. So you encrypt the contents, you encrypt the sender, you encrypt the receiver, you encrypt the amount, but you can still be sure that the system is in balance, like when you use triple entry accounting, and you can still be sure that an unspended output is an unspended output. So you can go as far as you want with that, but I don't think that's like really needed, because you only store proofs anyway, which are often one-way encrypted, so you cannot go to the original from the proof. And you just have to look at it very carefully, and I think you should be as transparent as possible, because that adds to trust as well, without breaching any privacy.
Yeah, and as bold as possible. This is also really true. I actually had a discussion meeting with one of the biggest retailers in the Netherlands, where we discussed the work we did with one of the biggest traders. And the retailer was very surprised that they actually, at the beginning of the project, the blockchain-supported project, they thought that the trader would never share data. And they actually thought, well, we're not so sure whether this actually has a chance of survival because of this fear of sharing data. And coming to the point, they were actually pretty okay to share data. So this whole issue of sharing data in supply chain and of protecting data is probably one of the key issues in supply chain development overall, not only in agri-food but in general. And blockchain actually enables a much safer sharing of data. And I think that's one of the things we need to convey much stronger, what the added value of blockchain is in that sphere.
Exactly, yeah, because you don't actually put your data in someone else's system, but as I explained in the beginning of the talk, you put your data in your own system, because you're also owner of the system.
I had a question. If I understand correctly, this initiative tries to use like the Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other public blockchain network to verify these transactions, but let's say like I have 10 kilos of these seeds. Who verifies that they're actually my seeds and they're grown on my land, that they're fortified with the things that I claim it to be? Is there like a third party that checks that, and or like multiple third parties that verifies like what I claim my product to be?
That is a problem that exists like in any supply chain solution where you have to deal with real world stuff and you want to make it digital. So it's not really, it doesn't make any difference if you do that in like a public chain environment or in a private chain environment. But it is something you need to be careful in, and also you need to avoid there to have like concentrations of power, because then again we can have like bribery and manipulation. So it's something to be very careful with, and there's a lot of research needed still to make. There's not like a clear solution for that. It's very difficult, but it has our attention for sure.
Maybe quickly checking in with Jan and Jenny before I go to the next question. Is bribery and manipulation now a thing that's common in fortified seeds?
There have been some instances of counterfeit products, yes. But I couldn't say how big the problem is. But I mean, this is one reason why we're very interested in blockchain as a solution.
So blockchain is really about sharing information and everything, but the European Union has now put a new law in for protecting privacy. What kind of effects would that have on blockchain?
Yeah, well, it has quite big effects basically if they don't change the letter of the law, and maybe we have to wait for some lawyer or some judge to say something about that, because it hasn't come that far this far. But for instance, if you have your personal data and you would hash it into with one-way encryption and you store it on a blockchain, then according to this GDPR law, that's even unlawful. So it makes it like pretty difficult. Even if you want to store a proof of your identity on the blockchain, you cannot do it by law. But in many cases, we don't need that, and you can keep this information like off-chain, yeah, and you store other proofs on the blockchain. But yeah, so European law is basically not prepared for these kind of solutions, and apparently European law is an example for other laws, so makes it even more difficult.
Do I see more questions? Jan and Jenny, do you have questions to either Bart or the audience? We see you talking, but we don't hear you talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it can be louder, but yeah, we can hear you.
My question is, what kind of basic information or Q&A or frequently asked questions can we use to get over the fear of sharing information? So when I'm interacting with food businesses now, how I'm trying to sell the idea of an open blockchain to them, how can I reassure them that the type of information that's going to be open on the blockchain is not going to be, is nothing to they should be scared of?
I think this one is for you first, Bart, and maybe there would be some audience input as well.
So the question was, how can I be sure that I don't have to be scared for the information ending up on the blockchain?
The open information, that they shouldn't be scared of the open information on the blockchain.
Yeah, how can I convince food companies that this is a good thing and it's not their sort of intellectual property that's going to be shared on the blockchain?
Yeah, well, I think we have to be very transparent on that. Like, what are we actually storing on the blockchain? Yeah. And these are only basically just hashes. And if you, for instance, work with amounts or kilograms transported from one place to another, then you can have this choice. Like, do we shield that information, or do we make it like really transparent? So it's a choice, and you can shield it if you want, and I think it's just a process that we have to go through, like showing that it's actually if you dive into this blockchain with human readable interfaces, then you would see that if everything is shielded, then it's like you cannot make any sense out of it.
Maybe to add to that, today I was reading a report by the Dutch Ministry of Economics and Climate on data sharing, with companies, and they were talking about voluntary data sharing that they would like to encourage, but also about forced data sharing. So now, of course, companies can be a front runner and indeed share data, but of course, governments are taking steps on ensuring the sharing of certain types of data. So that's maybe also an interesting one to keep in mind. And maybe there's also members here in the audience that would like to add. I see a hand.
It might be interesting to work with groups of companies with a common interest. We have lots of partnerships from our university with agri-food clusters and food associations, and those are typically groups of companies that are really hard to get together. So, for example, the two Dutch potato companies, HZPC and Agrico, are in the cluster together. It took like 4 years to get them in because they didn't want to work with each other. So maybe if you can start with finding associations that already have common interest, then maybe they're more willing to participate in these systems. So
Maybe for Jan and Jenny, who can hear you but not see you, our university is Aeres. More questions or question?
Yeah, just one question still about the public versus the private blockchain. As you said that the auditing and like checking if information on the blockchain is still a problem, even with the public blockchains.
Yeah.
And auditing firms are still necessary then. Why can these auditing firms not just make sure that the private blockchain is as it said it's be, so that the hyperledger is like audited by these firms, because you still needed them, which makes them like comparable to a public again, right?
Yeah, but it's actually also comparable to a database. Yeah, so then you can just stick to what you have now. That's the first answer to that question. The second is that if you want all these actors in the supply chain to share data, they want to share it like once, and not in 300 separate systems. And they want to share it with themselves, or for themselves. So they don't want to share it in your system. They're never going to do that. That was actually the experience we already had with EDP and other projects to try to convince people to share data. They don't want to give you the data and you can have your benefits with it, but they do want to share it in a public system. And they share the proofs. They put the proofs in a public blockchain system, and anyone who needs the proofs can get it. And that way you only have to share your information once. You don't need, as in a public blockchain infrastructure, you don't need the audit. Once it's in the blockchain, you don't need the audits of this company anymore, because then you have actually the miners as auditors. So you only need them once it enters the blockchain. And that's a big difference from now with the databases or with a private blockchain, because then you put it in the blockchain, you need to audit that process, but you also need to process like every half year the blockchain itself, because it's private and it can be manipulated. And manipulation is one thing, but think when you have like food disasters and there is a mafia trying to force people in changing the ledger, and they have gun pointing people who run like special nodes to be able to do that. These stuff happens if it's about millions. So it's also for safety of everyone involved in this chain to do it in a system which cannot be manipulated, even if you would want to. So that's the case for public blockchain.
A common question we then get, if the system can't be changed, how do we deal with errors? somebody types a 0 or something, it's maybe also good to answer that one.
Yeah, it's the same as with a bookkeeping. So if you have an error, you have to make another transaction which reverts the error. But that's also a benefit actually, because if someone makes an error, or if someone commits fraud, he can't erase it. So you can always refer back to it. Hey, that error happened or that fraud happened, and you can actually also see who signed this transaction. So you know actually which signature caused the fraud or the error. And if you know who belongs to that signature, you can punish him or her. Yeah.
I have time for some final questions. We won't punish before questions, but we do need to move on soon to our main case. I saw a question.
So you're trying to secure everything. With products, how are you trying to do it? For example, with RFID, or what is then the security in it?
Yeah, to maintain the connection between the chain and the products. There's different solutions about that. We had some nice examples here already in the food chain meetups. I think one of the most recent ones was ScanTrust with a QR code which you cannot copy. So if you want to know why you cannot copy it, you come to me during the break, I will tell you. But it's like a very smart system.
Or you watch the registration on YouTube.
Yeah, and RFID can also be very handy, mostly if you ship something that has like a temperature or other requirement that it shouldn't be above 20 degrees or something. And you could put these IoT devices inside a container with RFID stuff that you can read it out, like if it really happened or not. So yeah, stuff like that can be used. But of course, if you talk about products, you would always have to seal it into some kind of container. Otherwise, someone can swap it as well. But even there is a lot of innovation going on and a lot of research still to do. So there's a lot of work also to be done. But I think there's a lot more now, today, that we can use than there was like 3 years ago. So it's like there's a lot of progress there.
Then finally, Jan and Jenny, do you have a concluding remark or question? Pick whichever you like.
I think one of the things that is most important right now is at first to the technical note is our starting point, and from there on we're going to tackle questions like what kind of technology are we going to need, how are we going to protect the physical side, how are we going to incentivize stakeholders of the supply chain, and related to that is selling this, making sure that donors, that people who might see a benefit for other industries who want to contribute to this initiative have a clear understanding of why we are making certain decisions, why we are choosing for a certain kind of blockchain over another, explaining that their situation, the situation of the stakeholders, of eventual buyers, anybody who will be part of the blockchain, has a safe situation for its own data, and how it's being shared or not being, or whether it's being shielded. I think that is right now the most important in order to take the next steps, and that's where we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's have a big applause for Jan and Jenny. And of course also a big applause for Bart.
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
then
Bart.
we're going to say goodbye to Jan and Jenny. And suddenly I have 2 mics, I think. Thank you very much. That's probably not a good idea. And I'm going to invite up to the stage Hjalmar, and yes, Hjalmar van der Schaaf from CargoLedger, who is probably better equipped to do his own introduction than I'm going to do it. So a big applause for Hjalmar.
Excellent. Hi, good of you to have me. Should I move on the stage or? Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. I'm Hjalmar van der Schaaf. I'm founder of CargoLedger. We are, how does it work? Yeah. So actually here at the Fork, once again, thanks for having me. And we are actually living the brand, working from a container every day, experiencing what it means to be lading. So we started in this container, we moved up one, bigger one, so trying to go even further, but it takes some time. It's into blockchain. And we also have an office in Rotterdam, the former port building. Anyway. Data sharing. It was mentioned earlier. Big program in the Netherlands on data sharing, and I share on sharing data in logistics, because sharing makes the world better. Sharing is caring. If you share more and if you know more about what's coming your way, then you can optimize better. And that was what is iShare is about, basically. And there is a lot of difficulty in sharing data, because people don't want to share, but it's also because they don't own their own data, or I have a feeling that they don't own their own data. And iShare is pretty much sorting that with a protocol on what to share. There's a digital identity in there. There's authorization, access to data, and there is authorization. And basically, we did work for this on for the main port and for in the Netherlands for Schiphol and for the port of Rotterdam. And then we thought, okay, a blockchain can solve this. This is more of a top-down approach on with existing technology, APIs, maybe older technology. And then we thought, okay, with blockchain you can sort this bottom up. So we started developing back at the end of 2014, basically. So it's been a while already. And well, in my first job, I was digitizing waybills with Lloyd. We were a team of around 100, all working from behind one of those liver-colored desktops, but it was way back in the previous century when I was not as grey as I am now. But paper is still one of the main challenges in a nowadays supply chain. Paper adds complexity, paper gets lost, but it also provides trust. But that paper-based trust can be organized in a different manner, and that's what we do with CargoLedger. So when shipping goods, you want to know three things. Where do I send it? Where's my paperwork? And what is it? And when will I get my money? And on the money bit, the sooner the better. So what do we do to make that more efficient? And we are delivering blockchain solutions for the supply chain. How does that work? We create a trusted trade lane with all the relevant parties in the supply chain. We put relevant information in our system, and only the relevant what is needed and the trust, put that in the blockchain, in a public blockchain. We use Ethereum. We tag a shipment either with a sensor or with a QR code. And then the information is shared peer-to-peer, just over the internet. It's encrypted, and only the owner and the one who adds data has the right to assign someone else that can have access to that data. The goods are shipped, and on the receiving side, you basically scan the tags, verify the conditions as an oracle, and if all is okay, there can be an instant payment. So, one back, an instant payment, yes. So, what do we add, our value add? Proof of origin, or proof of information, proof of delivery, proof of actions, and payment on delivery. And all this also easier compliance and better stakeholders management. You basically know who does what in the chain, and you also can get that information to what have you, with customs or other regulatory authorities to make compliance easier. So the blockchain provides up to 80% more efficiency in your information processes. Maersk says, they are also focusing on blockchain with IBM on TradeLens. They are really putting a lot of effort in. Maersk is the biggest shipping company in the world, and they say blockchain can bring us 7% more. 7% more efficiency in our supply chain, or in what we do. And if you know that their margin is 1% on all their business, and they're doing an enormous amount of stuff, so 7% is really significant. So, and then you say that 80%, where does that come from? Well, it's less validation cost, less verification costs. So basically lowering the cost of doing business. Those controllers and those third-party people that you would need to control a public or a private blockchain, you don't need them or less of them in a public blockchain. So obviously, what the internet did to the cost of communication, blockchain is expected to do for cost of doing business. if you put it in an image, and we had this designed, basically, if this is more of an old-fashioned, old supply chain with a lot of faxes and emails, people were sharing data, so people sending emails or sending PDFs from via email, and then someone else is typing it over in another environment in their own ERP system, but also very complex financial constructs, letter of credit. For example, a captain of a ship in a port has to go to the bank with a wet signature to get his money. It's really old school. We've been doing that like for over 400 years in the same manner. And the old technology you were mentioned earlier, EDFACT and EDI, it's also like very expensive to modify and change. And in a changing environment with rapidly changing supply chains and needs of customers, that's not doable. So you need basically IT that works for the modern age and for internet. So, and if you look at what we do, we put the relevant info in, all mobile, all internet, smart contract, blockchain. So, and we generate basically the information from our systems, and we generate way bills. We generate bills of lading, and what else you have. If you put everything you put in can be presented in basically any manner. So, and more reasons. Do you trust the IT network of and capabilities of your business partners 24/7? It's also a big case, I would argue. And with the need of working together, as I mentioned earlier, you need also closer together. You need an IT infrastructure that supports that and facilitates that, and that's what blockchain can do. So, and organizing the first and last mile, incentivizing basically people putting data in the blockchain. That you can come up with game theory, I don't know, games or what have you, other processes that can make that easier and more, so you can come to a better sharing of wealth and what have you. And now it's unevenly distributed, and that can change. Still a lot of work to do. And also, if you're looking for like automated shipping, automated trucking, you would need something like a blockchain to make that work. So we have a working application. So we're actually having people using that. More than one application, more systems, more nodes. We're working from the hinterland towards the main ports, and we think that the hinterland or the first mile or last mile is basically where a lot of challenges lie. How do you know what is coming your way? You have to organize that in a different manner, and that's where we're using blockchain. And if you know more about the hinterland and more about what's coming your way, more about where it has to go, and the information is better, then you can also make an informed decision on which modality to use, which will lower CO2 emissions. So we have an accredited waybill solution, which in itself is rather unique. There's no one in the world with that. And a waybill is needed for transporting goods along on the road. And we are accredited by the national and international road organization, the NIVO, WEG. And to make it more business-like, we're saving money with that. It's like a digital version, not in itself, it's also for other digital versions, but a digital version of the ECMR really saves money and time. So that's significant. This is an example of the information we are getting out of our system. It's all put in, and then this is our digital waybill in the system, and this is basically the paper-based version. So in itself, but it's the same info. But just in a PDF, and this is what people are used to in the supply chain with trucking. They have those vrachtbrieven that are really old-fashioned, and this was the first ones I digitized way back in the previous century. And we're also working on a more international supply chain with smallholders, with not with farming, not food, but to really take it from the beginning, the source in origin, all the way to the producer here in Europe, and that's with a lot of stakeholders and a lot of effort on organizing that, but making the sharing the data, making that easier, but also being able to track and trace all the way back to origin. Where does it come from? Also, with regards to deforestation and other issues they have in origin. Okay, so this is us. accredited. We are part of Port Excel, which is the incubator in the Port of Rotterdam. Part of Aeres, as is the Fork. We're also part of Go and Ha, which is in the North Holland. And if you want to know more about what CargoLedger can do for your operations or supply chain, I would invite you to come talk to me. Thank you. Questions? I see one hand. Yeah.
Yeah, but we might have people at the live stream, and I'm not sure if they can hear you without a mic.
So just to understand correctly, are your customers transport companies?
We have shippers, transport companies, and freight forwarders. Yeah.
Okay, and so what if I bought goods, regardless of whatever goods, and I wanted to make use of your services? How does that work? Can I do it?
Yeah.
But how does that work? So
very well.
No, but is it through a transportation company, or how do you facilitate that?
No, yeah, it depends. You would want to ship those goods, I would imagine.
Well, let's make it very concrete. I'm developing a startup for fashion companies.
Yeah.
Those fashion companies buy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to work with your solution, how would that? In what way would that integrate into what I do? Could that integrate into what I do?
Yeah, I think it could, but we would have to look into that in more detail. But if you look at what you're doing, you would send a contract or an agreement. Would have an agreement with a supplier of yours, and then either the supplier or you would have to ship the goods to a retailer, or hypothetically, that could be that whole process of moving those goods from your supplier to here to wherever you want it. That could be facilitated by our the information bit. So the physical movement would have to be sorted by either a freight forwarder or all kind of transporters, shippers, etc., what have you. But the information bit would be made more transparent for you if you use our system.
So do you use plugins with ERP systems, or
yes,
how do you communicate with
yeah, we use a UBL, which is a Universal Business Language, which is a UNESCO, what is it, or a UN standard that basically describes all business processes and catches that in information. And it's an XML. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's an XML format, and yeah, that's what we're using. So we can connect. We have APIs. We can connect to existing ERP systems. Yeah. What we think, because a lot of we did that. Basically, we're creating on the one hand an access point or a gateway to a blockchain, to Ethereum blockchain. But eventually, if you and just to have connect to existing ERP systems, then you can get, because people are used to working with ERP systems or what have you, and then we could capture the information that's stored and put the trust over that in the blockchain and share that, so that would make that work for them easier. But if you take it a step further, you would maybe want to work towards those are enterprise resource planning. You would want to work towards a more of a supply chain resource planning tool, but it's somewhere on the horizon, the dot on the horizon. Yes.
So another question.
Thank you. Yeah, you briefly mentioned game theory. So could you explain how does CargoLedger use it and how?
Now, that's an interesting one. The big challenge is in the first mile, or in the last mile. Maybe the first, maybe organizing getting people to put stuff in the blockchain in the first mile, because then and that in a trusted manner, that you don't need third parties to certify stuff, etc. And it could be interesting to look at how can you incentivize that, and that's why I put in that game controller too. But I don't have a solution for that. But that's very interesting to look at, and it could also mean making have democratizing more the transfer of value along the supply chain, because now there are specific parties like shippers or big retailers maybe that get a bigger percentage of what is maybe what of the value they add. But that's okay. Have to be a bit okay. Anyway, yeah.
Well, I make my way. I think I saw questions over there. Well, I'll make my way to that question. I'm going to ask you a question myself because I saw a very nice self-driving truck on the screen. Self-driving truck, and I'm going to ask you to look into your glass ball and do a prediction. How much time would it take before we have the blockchain-powered self-driving trucks?
I don't know if they will be blockchain-powered. I mean, we would need AI, and I don't know if blockchain will be fast enough to sort all the challenges a self-driving truck is. But it would be good to have to really know where that truck is, what is happening to that truck, so that it can be traced back to origin, where basically every piece comes from, every bolt, every what have you on a truck. So if something goes wrong, you could also trace that back. In itself, self-driving trucks or
He can wait. There's another question over here.
Yeah, so but yeah, technology is there, but there is also legal issues and it's other stuff to organize and sort.
Okay. Keep your question in mind because Chris is protesting.
Okay, so what I don't think the operation of the truck itself, right, driving part of the truck will be automated with blockchain. But what you could definitely do is the route. So, and immediately update the route. And with the blockchain, that could be a self-serving entity.
Yep.
Making its own decisions to say where to send the truck.
And also interesting one, and you probably know Kria is also, they created this swarm of drones which are making, but it's on big chain DB, so that's in itself could be argued anyway, but the consensus of all those drones is very interesting, and with the smart traffic, that would also be something that would be very helpful.
We have AI lab initiatives in the science park, so this is definitely worth talking about.
Did I hear a year from one of you? Because I don't think I heard a year. I was asked. A year, yeah. When will we have the self-driving trucks with blockchain in it?
I don't know. I'm not going to do any predictions on that. No, sorry.
Well, let's crowdsource the wisdom of the crowd and the drinks after. Oh, first this question, then you.
So you're trying to defend it obviously by encrypting your information. Are there any other defensive ways to protect it from hackers being potentially exposing your information?
Hacker in itself, the system is information shared across the supply chain. So it's each node of each user ideally would have his own system. So if there's it's also a self-organizing system in the sense that if you take one out and you put it back up again, it would gather all the information. So backup wouldn't be needed in that sense. But hacking, you will not solve it with blockchain. I mean, that will also always be a problem. The good thing is that the sense of hacking is less valuable or makes less sense because the trust is stored in if you change something that you cannot prove with the trust that is stored in a blockchain, then it's not valid yet. You can use it, but then you're fraud. So that would be more transparent what you're doing. So even if you're a bad actor, that would be more obvious, easier to detect.
You said that the challenge is really on the first and the last mile. Now, if we take commodities, so any sort of half product that goes into any complicated product, it's actually not the first nor the last mile, but it's really exactly in the middle, where all the certified soya gets mixed with a non-certified. It's actually when it comes to the harbor and it's sent off. That's where the problem starts.
Okay.
Now, what is the most micro unit that has a good cost-benefits relation if it comes to tagging and tracking commodities at ship level? Is that the container, or can we go smaller?
I think you can go to a bag, but that would be then the first mile issue, I think. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that much about the food. Enough about the food supply chain and the mixing and sorting. But What I know is that what we can that the first, because obviously you try if it's a controlled. There are several issues. I would agree with you on that. But the smallest the container is. If you look at now what is happening, I was at a break bulk convention the other day, and well, everything is moving towards containers. So containers and blockchain is very logical almost, because it's a containerized, and you can close it, and you can put sensors in. You can track. You can store everything what's happening. If you move small, a pallet could also be, or a box could also be sorted. But everything is moving towards containers. That was also something that,
So the experience of CargoLedger is very much at container level.
Now, in itself, we started with a box. Just that was the initial idea, because the smallest unit of transportation, basically. So a small box, and then we just if you can put more than one box in a container, and then more containers on one ship. So you have consolidation issues, and how do you sort it with blockchain? But that's so in itself, no cargo. Yeah, we now we're with containers. We're working with that, but. Can also work with pallets. We have freight forwarders that only send out pallets. Yeah.
I see the next question. The question is how to reach the question.
Thank you for your talk. I was wondering, there is many blockchain solutions focusing on this issue. I was wondering, how would you see the competition, both through IBM in private blockchains, as well as through VeChain or other
there are a lot
public
of
chains solutions, and why would companies use your solution instead of other solutions that are out there, and that have maybe a bigger network effect already?
Yeah, true. I mean, that's a challenge. I think there will be but there are so many supply chains, so there will not be one size fits all, and one solution fits all. What you see happening with TradeLens or IBM and Maersk is that they are basically too big, and that they're more of a private or permission blockchain, and they allow people access to the data. And I don't think that will work eventually. If you, as I mentioned earlier, the trust will be in the public blockchain. That's why we also use that. There's Hyperledger provides a lot of functionality, but still, basically you could almost as easy, if you really want to sort it quicker, you could use a database and give people access to that. And what sets us apart, I think, is our accreditation with our waybill, and also that we're starting from the internet and work our way towards the ports. And what you see is the bigger ports, big shippers are forming consortia on organizing this, and also ports are doing it themselves. But they're forgetting the hinterland mainly. And then if you look at also Ericsson is doing stuff with one record on airplanes, flight freight. Okay, and so there's a lot of big companies are doing stuff. But if you take it a step further, the model, like cloud and big companies, big IT companies, you could argue that blockchain is like disrupting that eventually, and my hope is that it will. Anyway.
Before we go to the panel, I have time, I think, for one final question to just Hjalmar. So go ahead.
It's not. Well, it's a really nice concept, and it's not much of a question. I was just thinking. In terms of your international policies, it would be quite difficult to reach international markets like Canada because of the.
True. Well, the thing is, you have to. If you get customers, you have to travel a lot, and that's. But I was invited to come to a supply chain convention in Canada, but.
I guess the last part would be more or less. Are you also promoting other advantages with this, because you really focus on the less paperwork and the electronic aspects, but I'm also thinking of very practical things, like when dispatch officers are waiting in the office for the shipment to come in and they don't know where it is in the chain. So are you looking into other ways?
Yeah, it's like proof of origin, proof of information, proof of delivery, so basically proof of actions, track and trace. But you would, there are definitely more. But the paper is if you digitize the paper take paper out of the equation with digitizing it, and there are a lot of other advantages. Yeah, definitely.
Adding to that, are you maybe also saving CO2 with this?
Now, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the quality of information improves across the supply chain. So now they basically they don't know what is coming their way. So it's the last. Then at one point this container is there and it has to be moved, and the customer wants it moved quickly. But if you really know what is in there, you can plan stuff better, and you can make there's a lot of effort going on in multimodal or synchromodal planning, like taking stuff away from the road and moving it onto barges. That could be improved. So, and a barge spits out less CO2 than trucks.
Well, let's have a big applause for Hjalmar.
Thanks.
Although he's not going anywhere because he will be joining the panel, of course. Panel. And of course, for some reason your name showed up really big. I think that's probably something that went wrong with, enjoy it, I think. Take a seat, and I'm going to invite my other panelists up, and I'm looking at Chris if he can take that seat that I already loosened and added to the stage, so everybody can sit. And our next one here in line is Menno, and you've heard about from him already, Menno van Ginkel, and he's our newest addition at the Fork, actually. Today is his first official day at the Fork, so maybe already an applause for Menno. Then another gentleman that we've also heard about already. Yeah, there we go. Let's keep it at Max for now, because very difficult. Now let's go. But Max Wohlgemuth Kitslaar? Yeah. Okay, very good. And he's, I think, the founder of Marki.cc, and you will probably briefly explain that later yourself. But it has to do with fashion. Yeah, no food, but fashion this time. And I'd like to invite our last panelist, Pat Burgess from Aeres University. Take your seat, and then I'll just big applause for all our panelists, and I'll just pass around the mic for, I think, a bit more extensive introductions for the new faces up on the stage. Yeah, let's start. Yeah.
I can start, yeah. So, hey, I'm Menno. I've had an interest in innovation since like early 2010s or something. I finished a 5-year study program, bachelor's and master's in innovation management, and learn about the sustainable business side of things as well. And since like 1.5-2 years now, I've been doing a lot of research into blockchain, and I think it's really fascinating and really big potential. So I joined the team of the Fork to actually apply the knowledge that I've gained over the last 1.5 years and see where we can bring this.
So yes, my name is Max Wohlgemuth Kitslaar. I'm the founder of Marki, and what we do with Marki is we create a dashboard that does 2 things. 1, it gives insights in the value chain of the industry, and 2, it calculates each transaction that runs over our system based on price and impact. Impact, generally speaking, sustainability. And we measure impact by using a tool that is already available and used in the fashion industry. It's called the HIG index, HIGG. And the HIG index, the module that we use, gives or scores the impact of raw materials. So cotton has a score, polyester has a score, wool or alpaca wool has a score, merino wool has a score, etc. And we use that together with price to get to the best result for a buyer in the fashion industry. Each buyer, regardless of whatever he or she is buying, yarn, fibers, garments, anything.
I think that's pretty interesting. Thinking about how that could apply into the chain of food, actually. So my name's Pat Burgess, or officially Patrick. I'm a lecturer and course coordinator at the University of Applied Science in Dronten in Almere. It's Aeres. Actually, Matty, he's also doing his internship at the Fork. He's one of the students that were studying my program. So far he's passing, but we find out how the RPP is doing tomorrow. That's No, I could give a hint. Unofficial. It's good, but it's also related to sustainability. We work with a lot of projects, a lot of different applied research projects about how to improve the supply chain, especially in relation to the food industry, or really food specific, especially in our department. We focus, let's say, more at the end of the chain, so from the manufacturer down to the consumer. But we also have, let's say, upstream entities in the chain as well. It's really interesting for me to join such a panel because I'm always looking for people to help in these projects, especially with defining sustainability. And a lot of our projects are interested in blockchain, but to see how it works, it's always a question. So
let's start off with a question, and audience, think about your questions for our panelists. Today I'm feeling the prediction, so I'm going to ask you all, can you do a prediction about the future of transport and take maybe blockchain into account if that fits in there according to your predictions? Left to right? Well, for the audience? Yeah, you're holding the microphone.
Yeah, I can start. It's a good question. So we also have a logistical company in Canada as well. So that's where my background lays. And that's an extremely difficult question because I don't think that one solution is going to provide any real benefit for the future. I mean, we face a lot of challenges in relation to sustainability. I think we need to, tackle different problems at the same time, but we have to use different solutions. I think blockchain plays a role. Maybe someday self-driving trucks will play a role, but you've asked the question how long that will take. I think every other car on the road has to be able to drive itself before that works. So, but I think there's a lot of different solutions. I think just to become more efficient, more lean, cutting paperwork, cutting lead times, cutting distances, reducing CO2 emissions, it's all something we have to think about. So that's where I think the future really is.
So a couple of things maybe. In what we do, hence my question to you before, what we do is not so much the transportation part, because there's so much things going on in what we do that we must focus, because otherwise we end up with doing nothing. So we focus now on the calculation of each transaction, and transportation, for example, is something that we will do either later or in collaboration with a party, that a third party. So that's one thing. So I'm not too keen on doing predictions there. Regarding blockchain, so we're also investigating whether blockchain at all is a good solution for us, and if it is, how it could be a good solution. We see two possibilities there for now, very vague still, but one is the logging of each transaction, of course, in a ledger, and then use blockchain to do things with it. The other thing is, so if you look at us, if you look at what we do, is calculating transactions. If you picture underneath us a layer that is blockchain based and open source, and that contains impact scores of, in our case, fashion related items. So for example, these Higgs scores that I mentioned, but also how much water a manufacturer used to produce jeans, or how much chemicals are being used for the production of a shirt, then all these, let's say, numbers and values are available to everybody. We also to us, so we use them through APIs for our calculations, but they're there for everybody to use and also for everybody to add. So for example, if we started with those Higgs numbers, then at some point we can get rid, if we wanted to, we can get rid of the Higgs and replace it by real numbers on, for example, water usage or CO2 output or chemical usage, or etc. So that's a couple of things that we are considering regarding blockchain.
Audience and panel, I think it's really interesting. Let's finish this round and then get back to this and give some input, I think.
Yeah.
Yes?
Okay, transport. So I think most of the transport is being transported from A to B through either big trucks on the road or ships on canals or seas and oceans. I read somewhere that the 5 biggest ships that ship most of the products from China to Europe produce as much as 60 to 70% of all pollution in regard to transportation. So I think that's an easy fix if you can transform these couple boats to not use fossil fuels but other fuel, like biofuel, for instance. I also think that autonomy is going to play a big role, and I believe that it's going to be quicker than most people think. I think the 2 newest startups in this space are Tesla as well as Nikola. Nikola uses hydrogen cells to power their trucks, and Tesla uses battery electric technology, and both are focusing also on automation of these trucks. And I think a big difference can also make that the trucks are platooning, so they may have at first have a driver in the first truck, but then 5 or 6 trucks follow this truck, and it's this a big train basically, which can save a lot of fuel, can save drivers, because truck drivers are not the most booming industry, and they're not really well paid, etc. So I think there's a lot of benefits in regard to that. And I can imagine that blockchain solutions can be integrated into these systems. For instance, that every minute they will upload their location to a blockchain system, so it can be tracked or something. And maybe other information as well regarding the battery power left or something. That's basically a bit of my view. And if I have to put a time frame to it, I think it's very difficult, but like I think you will see the first tests in this area, I think around 2025, and then 2030 you see gradual adoption until 2035 or something.
The future of blockchain of transport is paperless with blockchain. We started yesterday and we will continue tomorrow.
Sounds great. Then let's get back to Max's 2 ideas. Maybe keep the mic actually and give some input if you feel ready for that. Or maybe quick recap? No?
Yeah, you want to track basically everything that's going on in a supply chain, or have to get to a score on that, right? To
make real numbers.
Yeah, it's also with kind of recap in my head and spitting it out. But is it true? That is it, or no? So it is a question.
Yeah, so we calculate each transaction. So each transaction is a combination of, well, of a couple of metrics, but of price and impact. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. That would be, it would, as you mentioned earlier, it's storing, but it's all transactions. So and that's also more and more transactions. So that would be something that could be stored in a blockchain and tracked. So that, but you also mentioned that also. So that's it would be interesting to look at that to see that happen. Yeah.
I would also be fascinated by the idea of if people bring their clothes back and you recycle them, and see how these waste streams and materials can be recycled and tracked as well. Do you have any ideas about this process?
Yes, we do. Wow, that sounds weird on the stage. Yes, we do. Anyway. Yes, we do have ideas about that, because for a very simple reason. I was told that because of an EU directive some 2 or 3 years ago, circularity is super heavily promoted. So, and concretely, so the idea is many fashion brands are already collecting clothes. So picture this. So these fashion, let's take H&M because they do it on a larger scale. H&M first buys stuff to produce a garment, then sells the garment, then collects it back, all transactions, collects it back, sells those garments to a chemical party, let's say DSM, DSM chemically recycles the garment to the polymer and back to the polymer, to the molecule, and sells those, and then another chemical party produces new polymers out of those. We're talking about synthetic garments, by the way, not cotton. So PET garments, garments that contain PET plastic. And then those polymers can be either resold to H&M or to another industry, for example, Lego. So we're talking to Lego about this. And to see how we can go from, I don't know, from a jeans to a block or something like that. But it's, I mean, very early stage. And I would say even before early stage. But nevertheless, because for Lego, it's a super important thing because their main product is plastic. So they need to find something. If they find an alternative.
For me, it's just really interesting concept about selling the impact of a product to the consumer. So you sell let's say you look at the product life cycle assessment and do an impact assessment on the inputs and outputs that are going in within the industry. And my question would be, because I think it's also something that could be relevant to the food industry, we do PLAs on products to see how kind of an effect they might have at the end of the supply chain. But I wonder if you think there would be any, let's say, potential trends to apply selling products based on their actual impact on the environment. Food products, not clothes.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day, I think. So we are lucky that there's a HIG. As I understood, there's no such thing as a HIG in food. So if you wanted to, let's say, to copy-paste our model, well, not copy-paste, but just for now, for the sake of argument, if you wanted to copy-paste, sorry?
I was saying you can fork the model.
Nice.
So, but if you wanted to copy-paste, then you'd have to find, a similar thing. Just like now with Lego, the assumption, of course, is that if you recycle a garment, then the impact is lower, or the negative impact is lower. But maybe it's not. And until we know, we don't know. So, also for that case, we would need to find, how to translate sort of in a metric what the impact of that polymer is.
Maybe before I go to questions for the audience, and quick question to Max. In food, we do see that lots of innovation comes from the more sustainable brands, like the organic and bio brands, for example, printing the etiquettes directly on fruits and vegetables. Is this something you also see in fashion, that innovation comes from sustainability?
Yeah, good question. So sometimes they say fashion is old-fashioned. If you look at a picture of a factory in 1800s in England, and you look at the factory now, same. So that's difficult. Another difficulty is that with this, let's say, this old-fashionedness, if that's a correct word, that many brands see the necessity and the opportunity in, big data and blockchain and all these buzzwords, but how? They just don't know. And most fashion brands focus on how to increase sales, of course. So they use chatbots and all this, things that I don't find really interesting. But it's difficult. It's super difficult because the fashion industry is, because of the pressure on resources, they're so under the loop of the whole world, basically. They have to, but they just don't know how to. That's my impression, at least. And I don't know if, for example, Patagonia, I love Patagonia, but I don't know if they're so innovative. The only thing that they are really innovative in, or different, is that they really make a cause of the good cause. And they invest in it heavily financially. But I'm not sure if it's really innovative. I just think they support it a lot. By words. Not only by words, by acting.
questions? I saw some movement in the audience. Yes.
Hi, Max. What's your goal, actually? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to get to?
Yeah, so regardless of my business goal, because that's to build up a successful company, but the main goal is to lower pressure on resources ASAP, because that's just unsustainable.
So that like reduce demand as well?
Maybe. So I mean, I don't know how, but it would be great if we could, let's put it very bluntly, if we could make money, if all parties involved could make money with producing less and selling less.
Mm-hmm.
All parties involved would also include Hjalmar, that might be shipping the garments. How do you feel about this?
I feel good about that. Yes.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think also that maybe one of the solution options is it's psychological, right? It's reducing demand. It's not going to be a technological solution necessarily for all this.
I don't know if you mean it this way, but if you do you mean let's clarify. Do you mean by so consumers should change?
Yes, basically you nudge the population to consume less.
I definitely agree, and actually when I talk to Patagonia, they also say that. So very fair, but I find it very one-dimensional to say it that way, because then you say, yeah, if you ask for it, we're going to do it. And I don't think, I mean, it's for me, it's a joint responsibility of everybody. Well, if of more parties involved than just everybody of a single, every single one of us as a consumer. And also, just to add to that, so what I think is also happening in food, actually, not only in fashion, but in maybe also in more industries, the pressure on brands to change has been coming from consumers, you know, the early adopters that don't want slaves to produce their t-shirts, etc. Now there's another pressure coming bigger and bigger, and it's the pressure from investors. So big pension funds, institutional funds that are asking, you know, more and more for companies to change.
So is there a kind of move to produce local?
Say it again.
A move to produce locally.
Well, if that lowers the impact, yes. If circularity lowers the impact, great. If you know, and there will be a whole array of solutions, I think, and the more the better, I would say.
I think I saw another question here. Yeah.
I heard a lot of talking about like the environmental performance indicators, like CO2, water, and well, that's really easily measurable because you can just say that that's the amount of water. But when it comes to like the social performance indicator, especially for the fashion industry, which is a big problem, of course, that's far less measurable and far less like quantifiable. Yeah. So how do you incorporate that into like a blockchain in your company?
Yeah. So there's indeed there's environmental impact and social impact. With the module that we use, it's only focused on environmental stuff. However, there's like loads and loads and loads of certifications that fashion brands use, and many of those are for social impact. So Fairwear and the ILO organization, a lot of these things exist. I see it that those, let's say, social schemes are a more binary thing. So you either comply or you don't. So in our calculation, we take the HIC because it's a numeric value, and we add a binary filter for brands that want to comply with certifications that they already are complying with.
Maybe make a quick round through the panel. How would you put social impact on the blockchain? You put it in front of Menno. Let's go, Menno.
Sure. Okay. So what you're seeing is, for instance, also I think Raphael is actually involved with this with Fair Food, is that you can register on a blockchain system how much the farmer actually gets and how much, you know, which percentage of the product that you're buying goes actually to the farmer and to the people who work at the farm. And so that's, I think, one easy low-hanging fruit that you can do. I'm not sure how you could extend that. Maybe others have an idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to put social on a blockchain. What I do see is obviously that blockchain, but as in technology in general, does have a significant social impact, and we would have to do something about it. I don't know what, but it would have to be addressed somehow by the lot of us, basically. But that's another point. But I wouldn't want to know. I don't know how to put social on a blockchain. Basically, you could make maybe thinking about it. If you make everything a transaction, you could make people earn money by bringing back their clothes to where they bought it from, and that could be something that could be used by a blockchain. That could be something. So different earning models. That could be something. But yeah.
I have one panelist that I haven't heard from, I think.
I have a small addition to make to what I just said. Like, I was just thinking, if robots take over these jobs as well, then I think social equality will also be improved. So less people have to work in these conditions.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what they were talking about. You could prove the financial impact that it has if you can prove that you can give more money back to the beginning of the supply chain. I would find it really difficult to quantify the quality of life in some of the countries where the product might be coming from. It's the same within the food industry. I mean, with the coffee, beans, and all this, it would be really difficult to prove where the benefits are going. So it would be good to look into something further on that, I think. I can give you another intern.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to. Question.
Yeah. Now, maybe just a comment, because I think sustainability overall has many aspects, and we often simplify it to people, planet, profit. And in the end, I think what blockchain is part of the next industrial revolution, it's a smarter economic system. And the issues that we are discussing is actually it's an indication of our still limited system where we can either communicate on price, predominantly communicate on price. We start to communicate a little bit on environment, on planet, and a little bit on people. But these are very young fields. And I think blockchain is one of the many technologies that has to help us to get a more smart economic system. So it's a bit of a downer that we don't have the solution in the next 10 years to come. But I really think we need to sort of focus the effort on very incremental improvements. And we won't be able to kill it tonight. It's very unfortunate. Yeah, Hjalmar, you're very disappointing. But and I do really want to emphasize it in food, that this whole transportation aspect, if you talk about sustainability, it's excluded. So if we talk about soy, palm oil, we're very focused on practices on farm. But actually, the whole travel of the soya from Brazil to the Netherlands, yeah, that's where we need cargo ledgers. So let's start nodding dots together.
Oh, and if I could add on to that, it's not always transportation that we're looking at in the food industry that would be the main cause for CO2. If I grow baby tomatoes in a greenhouse or those snack tomatoes in here in the Netherlands, the CO2 impact is huge. So it would just be good to share the complete picture everywhere. So I think blockchain could be used for that. So.
And speaking of fashion, of course, transport is a huge CO2 contributor there, because especially internet shopping, people ordering stuff, sending it back, ordering another size, maybe sending it back again. So think about your own impact on the environment. No, just a question.
Oh yeah. Well, I wanted to add something to that. I think someone said that mostly when using blockchain for social purposes, it's more arbitrary whether you comply or you don't comply. Binary, yeah. Okay. So it's either you comply or you don't comply. I don't think that has to be the case, because there's, for example, what we do at Fairfood is we show how much the farmers have produced, and we show the proof from the farmer that they in fact received this amount of money. But we don't give any judgment to this value. So we just say, this is for example, what we're experimenting with is we say, this is market price, this is fair trade price, this is the living income price, so what they should earn in order to make a decent living, which is often way higher even than the fair trade prices. and then we just show that to the consumer, and you're up to yourself to make a judgment in that. And other ways blockchain can contribute is also, for example, egg unities, to digitize agreements within cooperatives, or basically any claim you have about anything where there is any person somewhere that can verify this claim, you can prove in your blockchain platform by simply connecting this actor and allowing him to upload that proof. So anything about your product related to social can be a little bit social, average, above. The farmer can earn 3 houses a year for, you can, there's many options.
The reason why I called it a binary option is because most schemes are set up in a way that you're either green or red. So that's why we do it this way. And our aim is not to add, let's put it this way, to create another tool to assess social impact or environmental impact. So it sounds like a very interesting concept. And maybe we so far have not considered it, because the brands that will be our customers don't use it.
Exactly, and that's why I really like this development, which we're seeing in traceability and transparency, is that we used to just have certifications where, like you said, it's very binary. Either you comply with all these regulations, you have to pay a lot of money, that doesn't work for every company, or you don't comply with anything, you don't differentiate yourself at all. And with giving more real transparency and traceability, you can give the end consumer basically the option to judge themselves whether this meets their criteria or not. So it's a flexible new way of certifying in that sense.
I don't see any questions, so that means I have to ask all the questions. Okay. Here we go.
I was going to ask a question to Pat, actually. So you got a whole sort of universe of problems to explore. How do you pick the ones you want to work on?
Usually the government does that, or the companies. So we're both private sector focused. We do research with a lot of private companies, and it actually generates a lot of the. It's not income, we're sticked in, so we can't really make any money. So a non-governmental organization, but usually it's really dependent on the projects that are proposed to us, and then we have somebody assess that, a project management position, and they have to, feedback, does that fit our school's vision, or does that fit our university's vision? And that's really how we have to focus on each project. And to be honest, it's also related to funding, because if it's a 50-50 or a 40-60, we usually can't afford that ourselves. So we need to have more funding in place to actually participate in different projects. So it's a good question, because it's really difficult to answer.
I'm almost getting to final questions now, I think. So think long and carefully what you want to know, because else you might need to ask it over drinks and you might not have the whole panel ready waiting for you. So, do I see hands? Okay, I'll ask a question to Phil then. In food, and I think as well in fashion, you sometimes see different ways of better choices contradicting each other. For example, vegan leather might be nicer to animals, but not as good for the environment. Same is true, of course, in food, at animal welfare. So free-range chickens might produce more greenhouse gases, so therefore not be as nice to the environment as the chickens that are in cages. How would you put this on the blockchain if you want to measure better choices, or is that even possible?
Again, I think that goes back to what we were talking about. You have to give the total picture, and you have to be pretty open about that. You don't have to segregate farmers or companies specifically, but I think you do have to have some focus on what this group of people is doing, what this group of people is doing, and what that group of people is doing, and then maybe you could get some numbers that compares the entire system, and not just focusing on poultry, or not just focusing on dairy production, but really, because there are different studies in relation to organic dairy production versus conventional, but again, you would have to look at each different system that's in place, because I know some conventional farmers that have old school production systems compared to organic dairy farmers, so that also has an impact. So I think the total picture is something that we need to put into the system, and not just kind of the overview, I guess. Maddie's working on something like that also for his thesis, so he can share that with everybody after, because it's open publication, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point that you're making there, Pat. Because, for instance, if a farm is organic, but it still uses really old machines to run the farm, which might be more polluting, that kind of counteracts the organic impact, basically. So I think it's good to look at the whole picture. And from my perspective, I believe in local food systems. And you can debate what local means. Like, it can be a range of 30 kilometers, it can be 300 kilometers, can be within Europe. But to have a closer relationship with the producer as a consumer, with less intermediaries along the way as well. And I think that's a big solution, I think, and I think the EU in particular is also focusing on this. So I think that's local food systems are the way to go.
No, I don't see any final questions, I think. You want to add to the other question?
We're looking for someone to come to Manchester in June, or July, or June, actually, sorry, June 4th. And it's about local food systems in the EU. And I've already sent that through to Maddie. I don't know if you sent it through to your
Not yet.
Okay, check your emails. Okay. So, someone from the forum.
Yeah, I mean, this is this whole local versus global. It's a huge issue because not many people know that, for example, an apple in India has a lower CO2 footprint than an apple here in the Netherlands. So it looks great, have your local apple from your local farmer. But if it's waiting for 2 years in the fridge before you eat it, it's not so great anymore. So it's not an easy nut to crack.
No, to add to that, I know they did some research in the polder also on local and local food, and it would then be onions and carrots all day, every day. So that, so that would also be a challenge. But in itself, it's not an easy nut to crack. No.
No, exactly. I mean, this is, of course, fundamentally the challenge, right? We all romanticize sort of local food, but the reality is far more complex and
sure, but that's a matter of supply and demand. And if you can get enough of demand for local food and get people to use, because people are lazy, right? So people want to get the most cheapest and it's available. And the local farmers in Netherlands, they indeed have big freezers that they have to keep their pears and apples in, because there's not enough demand, because people can buy the ones from India because they are cheaper from Poland. So I think it's very complicated, and I appreciate the pushback. But it's it's a complicated issue, isn't it?
For us, a little bit to avoid these discussions, we are using exactly the Hick index, because the Hick index is, one, it's a numeric value that we can calculate with, but two, it's a tool that has been adopted by the majority of the industry, and it's not the best out there, but it's a tool that does, at least everybody knows about it, everybody uses it, and for us it gives it gives a right or a nice sort of starting point for impact.
Should we get a food Hick index?
Yeah, I mean, I've not been thinking so much about it, but because I don't know how it should be done. But maybe you could sort of assess for every single product. You could assess the impact. I don't know. I think it's a little bit more labor intensive also than.
Yeah, food and clothes are really uncomparable. Food is perishable, and food is there are many more categories to food than there are to clothes. So no, you can't. For food, as general, you can't. Forget it. We tried it. We are trying it. It's not possible. But we do. There is a lot of standardization happening, and in the end, it's again the challenge lies in adoption, and that's where you need alignment, you need discussions, etc. But the food index is not going to happen, and I don't think we need it.
In that case, I'm going to ask you all for closing remarks because it's already time to move on to the next part of the meetup. That will be pitches. Already looking forward to all the pitches from you. You have 1 minute to pitch things, so keep that in mind. Closing remarks. Anything you want to say to the audience? This is your moment to shine. I see a microphone in Max's hand, so you can start. You see it too, yes.
Yeah, so I can't. I have to leave after this panel. So maybe that's my closing remark. If you want something from me or you want something to say to me afterwards, please reach out through
how?
max@Marki.cc.
Let's go left and then continue on.
Oh, well, if we're going to do illegal pitches, then I'm going to also because
go ahead.
So we do constantly look for expertise in some different projects. Oh yeah, of course. So we do look for expertise in some projects. So I'm always open to hear about what sort of expert profiles that people have that are in the audience, because then it would give us a better database of who we could contact. And I'm really open to send students, especially based on Maddie's experience, because it seems like he really liked it, to different companies, especially in relation to the tech industry, food tech a little bit as well. We have a lot of contacts with companies like Unilever, PepsiCo, Heineken, these type of, let's say, larger food companies, but it would be nice to have some students also here in the startup village or somewhere in Amsterdam, so that's something as well.
I guess my closing thoughts is if you're not working or doing something with climate or social impact, go do it.
All right, well, I want to say thanks for having me. It was a very pleasure to be here. So I also like the conversations with you lot. So that's all, basically, yeah.
Well, thank you, panelists. Let's have a very big applause for our panelists then. And then I would like you to invite you to take a seat in the audience because we're going to do some pitches. Careful with tripping wires. I'm already double mic'd again. Indeed, it's time for pitches. And traditionally, I always have a first pitch I invite up on stage, and it is Chris. And Chris is probably going to tell us himself who he is and what's he going to pitch.
Hi, so my name is Chris, if you don't know me already. I am the head trainer at The Fork, and I also take care of all the technology and stuff. I really want to help people understand this technology and to make it useful for their companies so that they won't be surprised when it comes over and really shakes up their world, to really understand the fundamentals of this technology and how you can use it. And if that is of interest of you, you should contact the Fork and get yourself, sorry? Good. Hi at the Fork, basically. So hi at the Fork .online, and get yourself a training, and I will be your personal teacher at that point. Also, I would like to take this moment to thank my lovely students that are looking around here. These kind of events are always very stressful, so a lot of things go wrong all the time. But it's always a lovely experience, and they can see their teacher stress, and that's also fun for them, fun for the audience. Yeah, it's something of a running joke. Anyway, thank you for having me, and I hope you have enjoyed the meetup.
Secretly adding to this pitch, our next training date, if you want to start at the first training, will be June 14th. That's a Friday morning, 9 to 1, here in the Startup Village. Do I have more pitches? I think I have some students looking for internships. Yes? Come join me. Oh, no, another one. You can all look for internships, but probably not together. So.
Kind of shocked me right there. Well, I am Haytham Besha. I am 18 years old. I'm a student of Chris. Right now, I am studying application media development. Right now, we are covering a lot of web development. So if you need a web developer anytime next year, I would be glad to be your intern around that moment. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll give you back the mic.
Well, hi, my name is Laurens Tobias. I am 19 years old. I am in the same class as Haytham over there. I also do application development. Myself, I have some experience with Linux as well, to the side. And same as Haytham, I'm looking for an internship next year. And if anybody is interested, please feel free to contact me. And yeah, here's the mic.
Yay. More volunteers? No? Yes? Yes? Yes?
Especially on the stage. Right. My name is Anthony Mann. It sounds a little bit strange, but yeah, I have to deal with it. I'm 90. I'm 19 years old. I'm currently what you call it? A student from Chris at the ROC Midden-Utrecht. Currently, we are studying web development, but also teaching how to be a full stack development for in the future. And currently, I'm searching for an internship. So if you're interested, feel free to contact me.
Do I have pitches that might not involve internships or do involve internships? Come join us. Bart, internship?
No, and I'm also not going to tell my age. But if you can't find any internship anywhere, but you still want to be involved in talking about blockchain and all kinds of cool stuff, then every Tuesday we have like a co-work day in the center in Miet Berlage, and it's free of charge. It's open. You can just book yourself in on the meetup.com website. So search for BlockDam and come there and have a chat. And it's always cool. So and you learn a lot. So me, I'm also always studying. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm Jack. I'm one of the students of Pat Burgess that brought me here. I'm an international food business student, first year. Next year I have an internship, and I'm really interested in blockchain. So if anybody be interested in an IFB student intern for next year, feel free to contact me.
Yay! More pitches, come join me. Yeah, you can also line up if you really want to make sure I don't miss you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Nick. I'm doing my master thesis for the Wageningen University about how blockchain could improve agricultural supply chains. So all about sustainability. And I'm now benchmarking 3 blockchain designs. And I really want to know if I miss a specific design, you think, okay, this is really useful, this is something else, I need to include this one. So first is like the EBN Food Trust, is what is the Hyperledger. The second one is Provenance, is the Ethereum blockchain, and the third one is VeChain, which is also a public blockchain, but fast maybe. So the OpenSea chain. Okay, well, come to me. I would like to discuss it with you because that's why I'm here. Yeah, thank you.
Go join Blockdown, I think, in your case. I think I missed a student over there. Are you looking for an internship?
Hello, I'm Rebel Al-Haqqas. It's a weird name, I know. I'm not around here. I'm from the Middle East, actually. I am 17 years old. I'm also a web development student. I'm looking for an internship. I have a bit of experience in C++, and now I'm learning PHP, SQL, JavaScript, and HTML, CSS 3. Thank you.
I see another hand. You're also looking for an internship. Yes.
I just kind of want to say, like, all of you guys studying web development and becoming a full stack developer learn blockchain as well, because they'll be in high demand. So there is a high demand. There will be even bigger. So learn to program on Ethereum and other blockchains as well. It will do you well in the future.
I don't see hands anymore and people approaching me. Okay, then I'm moving on. Of course, the training, if you're interested, scan the QR code or reach out to me or send an email to hi@devork.online. This is our YouTube channel. Lots of our content is there. For example, also the live streams of the meetup. So if there's meetup cases that you are interested in but couldn't be here in person, then you can also watch them at YouTube. And the next summit, I'm already going ahead of myself. The next meetup will be in a month, namely on June, I think 11th, yes. And we will discuss the upcoming summit that just received its new name, namely the Strike 2 Summit. So if you want to want to learn more about the summit and what we're going to do and maybe give some input on the program and indeed the planning of the summit, then be here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all next month and grab a drink, have some talks, and don't forget to hand in your plastic cards. So we're going to save the environment. Yay, save the whales, save the turtles. Thank you very much.